After leading the NFL in sacks in 2024, the Denver Broncos defense has their eyes set on that 1984 record set by the Chicago Bears. And we'll tell you how they can get there on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Broncos Country? Welcome into another episode, Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We know it's your team every day. Thank you so much to everyone in Broncos Country, all the everydayers. Thanks for tuning in, making us your first listen, however you choose to do so. We appreciate you so much. If not yet an everydayer, become one. Hit that subscribe or that follow button wherever you get your podcasts or YouTube. That way you never miss out on what's going on with your favorite team every single day, all year long. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports.
And I'm Sayre Bedinger, site expert at predominantlyorange.com.
And we're continuing our trend here on today's episode show of being bold with our 2025 predictions in Broncos Country. We loved your contributions in the offensive episode yesterday. If you missed that, make sure you go check it out. But we want you to get just as involved here today as we go through why the Broncos have their eyes and their sights set on breaking that 1984 sack record set by the Chicago Bears defense at 72. How can the Broncos get to 73? Who's going to lead the team in sacks? So much more. We'll go through that. And then we'll talk about tackles. Who's going to lead the Broncos at linebacker or any other position with tackles this upcoming season? And then could the Broncos secondary have more takeaways and interceptions this upcoming season than they have in recent years? We'll go through all that and much more on today's bold prediction episode, Locked On Broncos. Sayre, let's start off with the pass rush department, the outside linebackers. The defensive line, we look at that in terms of how you get after the quarterback here. The Broncos last year led the NFL with 63 sacks last season, and we saw an abundance of guys contributing. I mean, you had two rotational guys in Jonah Ellis and Dondre Tillman. Those guys each had 5 sacks. They combined for 10 last year. Jonathon Cooper, Nick Bonitto, those guys became the first pass rush duo to hit double-digit sacks since Von Miller and Bradley Chubb did it in 2018. And then Zach Allen, a guy who's just a relentless high motor player, was getting after the quarterback. And even if it wasn't showing up in double-digit sacks, it was showing up with double-digit quarterback hits, pressures, and more valuable statistics here. Can the Broncos defense in 2025, if everybody stays healthy, can this unit, in your opinion, can they challenge that Chicago Bears record set back in 1984?
I think they can. I really do. I think, Cody, they came so close last year to doing something special as a unit, and they did. They led the NFL in sacks, but obviously that gold standard, it's been long lasting. I mean, the Chicago Bears set that record back in 1984, so it's one of the oldest records, I think, in the NFL in terms of like something that you would think at this point, somebody should have broken it, right? Somebody in a 17-game era especially should be able to get 72 sacks. Easier said than done. And I feel like anytime you challenge the 1984 Bears as well, you got to channel the inner super fans there. So if you had 2 Ditkas coming off the edge, you might be able to have 2 guys just lead the NFL in sacks overall. But Cody, I feel like that's where we're at, is like bold predictions. I should have brought down the aviators and my jacket and been like, you know what? You got Nick Bonitto on one side, you got Jonathon Cooper on the other. The only thing that's stopping that train is 2 Ditkas, and there's no Ditkas against these guys. I think they can, Cody. I think they've got the pieces to be able to do this. 72 sacks is a lot. I mean, a lot. So I get that, and I don't think we can diminish that. But man, this unit was so good last year. 2 guys with double-digit sack numbers, and then I think 2 others, Zach Allen and John Franklin Myers, who were really, really close to that. So you get a handful of guys in this unit, and you have ascending players coming up from behind. Jonah Ellis, Dondre Tillman. You have so many guys who can make plays as pass rushers. Just feel like that this is kind of percolating beneath the surface to finally, hopefully, break that long-standing record in 2025.
Let's set the over-under, since they had 63 sacks last year. Let's set it at 63.5. Are you leaning with the over, or are you leaning with maybe kind of on par or the under?
I'm saying over. Let's get over. Let's see what this team, because 64 sacks in 17 games. I'm not that good at math, Cody, but I think that's roughly what, 4. I think that's about 4 per game. That's a lot. And so I think, it's going to be tough, especially because you play against so many quarterbacks that are, we did an episode about that, right? I mean, we have a lot of good quarterbacks on the schedule this coming season, but you know what? 4 sacks a game for this defense, I think is attainable. And if they can do that, I think that puts them at, it'll be 68 sacks in a 17-game season. So yeah, I'd say let's hit the over on 63.5.
That math there, I did it on the calculator these days. 3.7 is what that equates to. So we rounded up nearly 4 sacks a game. The Broncos obviously had a couple of games where they had 5 sacks. They had a game against Joe Burrow where they had 7 sacks on Joe Burrow. I agree. I think that this is a defensive, that it's going to ramp up pressure. And I think the biggest reason why I think that they will have more than 63 sacks this upcoming season, it goes back to what Zach Allen said in an offseason podcast with Chris Long. I think it's Green Lights or something like that. Or I don't want to butcher the name or get it wrong, but he just did a podcast, right? And one thing he said about that defensive line group and the outside linebackers is when it comes to rushing the quarterback, it's a very unselfish group that they know, hey, if I can crossface here on this stunt, I'm going to draw 2 defenders. You got to get home. Like, it's going to open you up to get a sack. Like, it's very much about like the defense winning as a whole and not just I'm going to get my sack numbers. That is why I think this mentality going into year number 2 with these guys, with Jamar Cain, a little bit more comfortable now with additions that you've made there with Drake Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga. You're going to get guys in the secondary blitzing a lot more this upcoming season as well. I think that they will definitely get over the 63.5 sack mark this upcoming season. I'm with you there. Let's go into a little bit of fun rapid fire here. You have a bold prediction here that I do think is attainable here, where you have the Broncos having 4 players with double-digit sacks, and that hasn't happened in a long time. Did that even happen in the Super Bowl 50 year?
No,
because Vaughn and DeMarcus, like Shaq was contributing, Shane Ray was contributing. But I don't think they had 4 double-digit sack producers even in the Super Bowl 50 year. So if they were able to achieve 4 guys with double digits, Sarah, that would be astronomical, I think, for the Broncos. I definitely think that they would challenge that Bears record in 84.
It would be crazy. I mean, they did have 3 guys that had 20-plus quarterback hits last year, and then a 4th, John Franklin Myers, who had 18. So it's that group of 4 right there that I think will determine whether or not this can happen. It's Nick Bonitto, Jonathan Cooper, Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers, and then you can pick your wild card, right? I think between Jonah Ellis or Dondre Tillman, I mean, you could swap one of those guys out if you want. The only thing that makes me question this prediction, Cody, is what Sean Payton basically said Nick Bonitto was playing too much last year. And I'm pretty sure the same sentiment is going to be shared about Zach Allen, right? Because he played almost 1,000 snaps as a defensive lineman, which is, I mean, that's crazy. You don't see that very often. Yeah, he's an Iron Man, and he saw the fruits of that labor with 40 quarterback hits. Not enough people talk about Zach Allen. And so I just think, look, you have guys that can do it. They're getting to the quarterback already. Finish that job, right? Get the quarterback to the ground, and they can do that. They've proven time and time again, consistency. These guys get to the quarterback and they get the quarterback on the ground. Now you just got to make sure the ball is in his hands or pop it out of his hands, right? So get to the quarterback again, like you did last year. And I think those results will come.
Nick Bonitto led the team in sacks last year at 13.5 here. Sarah, I've got him leading the team in 2025 with sacks again. I've got him with 15 sacks this year. I've got Jonathan Cooper with 11, and I've got Zach Allen right behind with 7. But then I got a handful of players that are going to be, 6, 7, 5. You're going to have a couple guys with maybe 2 or 3. Those guys will probably be in the secondary a little bit, or maybe even 1. But I think that you're going to get a widespread contribution from this group, and it's going to raise the price tag here for Nick Bonitto this upcoming season, which, hey, will the Broncos pay that bill? They need to. They should. Nick Bonitto deserves that contract extension. And look, Broncos Country, we want to hear from you on today's episode of the show when it comes to whether or not you believe the Broncos can set the NFL sack record this upcoming season. Let us know if you think it's attainable or not. And on top of that, share with us who you think will lead the team in sacks this upcoming season. But we're not done yet, Broncos Country. Up next, we're going to discuss why Drake Greenlaw and Alex Singleton have the best chance to be the most productive tackling linebacker duo in the NFL this season if they stay healthy. We'll dive deep into that and more on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
Today's episode of Locked On Broncos is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball, under the lights, or day games if you're a Cubs fan like me, golf on the green, fall asleep to golf in the afternoon, or some high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You won't be falling asleep during any golf match with FanDuel. You are already following the action. So why not make it a little bit more thrilling? Because with FanDuel, you can get in the game while your friends are out there getting sunburned on the beach.
You can track all of your favorite matchups inside the FanDuel app across various sports, and they always keep it fresh with brand new daily promotions that encourage you to get in on the action. On top of that, whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or if I'm watching a bet right into the ninth inning, FanDuel, they make it feel like I'm part of the action, and they're going to make you feel like that too. So if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started.
It feels like just about any prediction Cody and I could make about the Denver Broncos linebackers here in 2025 would be a bold prediction, because it feels like the most uncertain aspect of the roster as we head into training camp. But we're going to make our bold predictions for the linebackers anyway. And just tackling in general, maybe a linebacker is not going to factor into these equations here, Cody. We're going to talk all about that and more coming up next on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. But Broncos Country, really quickly, I want to say thank you to all of you that make us your first listen of the day every single day. We appreciate you so much. Cody, let's talk about this. The next category for our bold predictions is tackles in 2025. Typically, this distinction of the best tackler on a team is going to go to an off-ball linebacker. The question right now for the Broncos is, who's going to be playing off-ball linebacker? We know who we assume is going to be playing out there, so I guess maybe we root our predictions, our bold predictions in that. But what do you say to this? Who do you think is going to lead this team in tackles, and do you have a number in mind there?
Well, you want, I think, theoretically, you want a linebacker to be leading the team in tackles, right? Because those are the guys that outside of the D-line opens up the holes for the linebackers to fill when we talk about their run fits. And, if you're not having that happen, it's a little problematic. And I would say this, if you have a safety who's leading your team in tackles, it means that running backs and rushers are getting to the next level, the second and third levels, a little more often than they should. So I would hope the inside linebacker room does it. I think if he could stay healthy, the easy button that I'm going to smash here would be Dre Greenlaw leading the team in overall tackles this upcoming season, just because when you watch him on film, he's everywhere. He flies to the football. He plays like a bat out of hell, one of your favorite phrases that I know you love using here. I've got him as maybe, I don't know if this is bold, but 153 solo tackles this upcoming season. Well, actually, I don't know if I should do solo because that's a little crazy. I think he'll have over 110 solo tackles and then 40-something odd assisted tackles on top of that to kind of go with that 153 total tackle prediction. Where are you at with this? Is it a linebacker for you? And if so, who is it?
Well, I think that, like you said, the hope is that Dre Greenlaw can be that guy. And you mentioned that if a safety is leading the team in tackles, it's probably not a great sign for your defense over the long haul. Brandon Jones led the Broncos in tackles last year with 115, and right behind him was Cody Barton, who's now with the Tennessee Titans, who the Broncos will see in week 1. Dre Greenlaw's career high in tackles, Cody, 127 in 15 games. But how about Alex Singleton? Is it bold to say he'll lead the team in tackles coming off the ACL injury? Maybe. The last time he played a full season, 177 total tackles. The guy flies around the field. He makes plays. I think that there's a bold aspect of this to say that Alex can come back from the ACL and defeat kind of the idea that, man, he's in competition for a starting job. Like last time he was a full-time starter, dude had 177 tackles. And now the talk is, well, he's in competition for a job, which I think is reasonable at this point. But at the same time, maybe he comes out and maybe he just blows us all away with another 175 plus total tackles. And I think that here's where I'll go with a bold prediction. I'll say that the two linebackers for the Denver Broncos will not only start and play the whole year, but I think Dre Greenlaw and Alex Singleton combine for over 300 total tackles this coming season.
Okay. That would be huge. And yeah, who's going to be the leading chunk getter of that? I mean, you mentioned the 177 from Alex Singleton in 2023. The year prior in 2022, it was 163 tackles there, with 101 of them being solo tackles. In 2023, he had 106 solo tackles. 2021 in Philadelphia, he appeared in 16 games. He started 8, but appeared in 16. He had 137 tackles, 81 solo, and then in 11 games had 120 tackles there in 2020 for that Philadelphia Eagles defense. So this is a guy, as we know, Alex Singleton, wherever the football is, he is there. I feel like it would be a safe bet to kind of assume and signal that Dre Greenlaw, Alex Singleton, if healthy, will be the starting linebacker duo for the Broncos defense this upcoming season. And I like that if they both stay healthy, let's say they both get 15, 16 games between them, I think we could very well see them hit combined 300 tackles between the two of them. Now, I'm also factoring into this equation too. Could a safety maybe throw their name in the hat? Because Brandon Jones last year led the Broncos in tackles last season, which, I don't think that was a surprise to us. I think we were a little more surprised at how well balanced Brandon was, right? He was a good tackler, but I think he impressed us more as a ball hawk. And it's like, all right, this is a guy who can do both at a high level. Whereas coming into it, when the Broncos signed him in free agency, we weren't necessarily sure if he was just going to be a box player that is going to help in the run, or if he was going to be a guy that you really have to account for in the secondary. The addition of Talanoa Hufanga, and Brandon Jones, these two guys here, health obviously being factored into it. But when you watch Dre Greenlaw's tape, Talanoa Hufanga is right next to him in a lot of those categories up in tackles. Could maybe the safety duo of Brandon Jones and Hufanga challenge this linebacker unit a little bit as well, especially if they roll them into the box a little bit more?
I think it's possible, right? I mean, we saw back a couple of years ago when Hufanga was a first-team All-Pro, he had 97 total tackles. And like you mentioned, and we've talked about, Brandon Jones had 115 total tackles last season to lead the Broncos. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility because of how often these guys attack the line of scrimmage as well. You want to see the second level of defense get to the ball carriers before your safeties do. But at the same time, we know these guys are going to be in attack mode. And we know Vance Joseph likes to have his defensive backs in attack mode as well. So I would not be shocked if you could pick 4 or 5 different guys to lead this Broncos team in total tackles this season, Cody, and it wouldn't shock me. But I think that out of the 4 of these guys, it would be the most surprising to me if Brandon Jones repeated as the team's leader in tackles, which that would be interesting if you have all these guys added to the mix, and assuming they stay healthy, which we hope happens, to have Brandon Jones lead them in tackles again would probably be a pretty significant development.
I think if he stays healthy, I think Alex Singleton will definitely probably take the mantle there, right? Because think about this. Singleton played in 3 games last year for Denver, okay? 3 games, 31 tackles in those 3 games, 17 of them being solo, 14 assisted, 1 tackle for loss, 1 QB hit. That right there, he was on track once again to probably have over 170 tackles again if he would have played all 17 games if he didn't tear his ACL. So I find that to be an interesting number. But Broncos country, when it comes to the linebacker position or who is going to lead the team in tackles in general, it doesn't have to be linebacker, it could be safety, it could be defensive lineman. Who do you think will lead the team in tackles this upcoming season? And can the Broncos linebacker duo of Dre Greenlaw and whoever, can they maybe combine for 300 total tackles this upcoming season? Make sure you share your thoughts with us as we're having fun with our bold predictions here on today's episode of the show. But we're not done yet, Broncos country. Still have a lot to discuss here. We're going to transition and pivot to the secondary. Which Broncos players will lead the team in passes defense this upcoming season and interceptions? Could Riley Moss, with the volume of targets we expect him to get, can he lead the team in INTs in 2025? We'll share our thoughts on that more here on today's episode of the show. As we continue our bold predictions on today's episode, Locked On Broncos, we'll go through the secondary, who will lead the team in takeaways, passes, defense, and more here. Just want to say thank you once again to everyone in Broncos country. Thanks for tuning in, making us your first listen, however you choose to do so. Sayre, I always feel like the secondary, in my opinion, it's one of the more well-rounded positions you have to play, right? Because the Broncos, as we know, their safeties can tackle, their safeties can play the football in the air. They're really good at that. The Broncos corner group that they have as well, they're very good at playing the football when it's in the air, and they're also very good at coming up and tackling in the run game. Now, this year, I think, obviously, with Pat Surtain coming off of the Defensive Player of the Year award in 2024, he is going to be a guy that is going to get a lot of targets once again, which means that the guy opposite him, which is Riley Moss, I know a lot of people want to question that. That's where Riley was working all offseason program, and nobody was ever taking Riley off the field. No other guy was mixing in where Riley was. So read into that what you want, Broncos country, but that's what we've seen at practice here. Who will lead the team in interceptions this upcoming season? Sayre, you look at the guys in the secondary at the safety position. You look at the 3-level corners there at the outside and inside the nickel. Who is going to lead the team in INTs, and what is that going to be?
I want Riley Moss to lead this team in interceptions, Cody, and I want it to be a big number, right? I think you could make an argument that so many different guys could lead this team in interceptions, which is a great discussion to be able to have because you have so many playmakers in that group. But like you said, he's going to still get a high volume of targets coming his direction. And I think he's primed to make teams pay for that a little bit more this coming season. I think there's going to be a bit of an added chip on his shoulder. I think we're going to see the game slow down for him a little bit this coming season. More plays on the football, more interceptions, doing more of what we saw him do at Iowa, where he was absolutely a ball magnet. Every time the ball was in the air, every time it hit the ground, it felt like Riley Moss was finding a way to make a play. And I think that's what we're going to see as he gets just more and more comfortable in the NFL. Last year was pretty much a redshirt rookie season for him, right? So he was out there playing extremely well with his first extensive snaps on the field against NFL wide receivers. Now this year, I think things are going to slow down. I'm saying 7 picks for Riley Moss this year to lead the team. I think he's going to be big time.
That would be huge if that was the case. And, that would just slam the door on the narrative that I think, a lot of Broncos fans have about Riley, which I feel like it's still an unfair narrative considering the Cincinnati game, because if you talk to anybody, that's the only thing they bring up. Well, the Cincinnati game. Well, okay. What about the other games in which we saw Riley Moss playing at a high level? So if he were to come out there and look, he's going to get targeted quite a bit. I think he and Jaquan McMillan, they saw the most targets overall on the team. Jaquan inside the nickel. Last year, he was targeted 101 times, according to our friends over there at Pro Football Reference. Gave up 65 catches for 688 yards and 3 TDs in that regard there. If you look at Riley Moss on Pro Football Reference, you look at their numbers. They have the advanced analytics too, and I'm very curious where they get this, because you look at them and you look at NFL Next Gen stats, and they seem to be differing with each other a little bit. Riley Moss last year was targeted 103 times, gave up 67 catches for 747 yards and 4 touchdowns. Obviously, 2 to T. Higgins, 1 to, I think, Jalen Coker in the Carolina game, and then 1 to, I think it was Chris Godwin in week 3. So, you look at the overall number there, not bad. That 2 touchdowns given up against T. Higgins is something that will always loom there. I think because of that, right, if he's going to be the most targeted cornerback on this team, you want more takeaways. And I think that's something we're going to see an emphasis this upcoming season with. So I like that bold prediction. The Broncos haven't had a guy, I think, get close to 7 interceptions in a season since really Justin Simmons, and his career high in a year, I think, was 6, if I'm not mistaken. So it would be the first high number there. And I think in today's game, Sayre, I think intercepting the football, or, remember the Champ Bailey year where he was just getting all those interceptions, and you've had other guys like Richard Sherman getting all the interceptions that those guys have. I feel like we're not seeing it at that rate there. Look, I think Brian Branch was one guy, Xavier McKinney last year, those guys had a ton of interceptions here. It is hard, I think, for corners to be able to get that in today's game, just because teams love to attack the middle of the field a lot more. So I'm with you on that. What about passes defense this upcoming season? Who do you think will have the most passes defensed out of everybody that we've talked about in the secondary so far?
I'm going to go with another bold name here, and I'm going to say Jahdae Barron, because I do think that if he's going to be the number one guy in the slot, Cody, I do think he's going to be the most targeted player on this team, because he's a rookie, and teams are going to say, all right, you're going to have to prove to us that we shouldn't throw at you. And I think he's going to come through. I think he's going to probably have at least 12 passes defensed. Now, is that going to be more than Pat Surtain? I don't mean to sell Pat Surtain short, Cody. I think that if we want to get really bold predictions with a guy like Pat Surtain, it would almost have to be another segment entirely where we start saying all right, I think he can break Champ Bailey's mark. Like, if teams are going to throw it his direction, like we talked about in our previous discussion about Pat, he's going to have to go out and make more plays on the ball and make teams pay for throwing his direction. Just simply put, he had the interceptions that he did last year, game-changing plays, shut receivers down, holds them to low yards per completion, etc. But I don't know. Do you struggle with that as well? And maybe any of the listeners can agree, because it's okay, we want to talk about bold predictions for the defensive backs. I almost struggle to include Pat because I don't anticipate him getting tested all that much.
No, I think it's very valid because you look at the overall volume of targets that he gets in comparison to everybody else. It's like, all right, the teams are going to do whatever they can. They're like, we're not going to throw wherever number 2 is. We're going to not throw to that side of the field, or we're going to try to throw somewhere else in the vicinity, but not to his targeted guy that he's going to be on. That's hard. I mean, it is hard to say like, hey, Pat's going to, get 8 or 9 interceptions a year. I would say that if teams targeted Pat Surtain as much as like Riley Moss and Jaquan McMillan got targeted last season, if Pat had over 100 targets on him or 105, I think very much so he would probably have 7 or 8 picks on that. I think that's something that we'd look at. Now, in terms of passes defensed here, for Jahdae Barron, I wonder what that number would be because Pat Surtain, the most he's had in a season was 14. And when you talk about the most passes defense by a corner, I think or a rookie in franchise history, I think it came from Bradley Roby initially. That was 13, but then 2017 he followed that up with 17. So I think Pat was the second most targeted corner and as a rookie overall in his career when that happened. Bradley Roby had it in a season though with 17 passes defensed in 2017. So will Jahdae Barron have 10 plus? I think, yes, that's probably feasible here at this point. I'm with you. For me, I've got Pat leading the team in interceptions with 5 this upcoming season, which I know you hear the number 5 interceptions and you think about, okay, well, if that's going to lead the team, then that means that the Broncos defense isn't necessarily getting as many takeaways. I think when you add more numbers to other guys, like I've got Riley Moss, I've got him with at least 4 interceptions this upcoming season. I've got Jaquan McMillan with 3. Hufanga with 2. I got Brandon Jones with 4. And can Jahdae Barron get 1 or 2? And what we're not even factoring in linebackers. Can the linebackers get 1 or 2 at this point? I think Denver can get to that point here, Sayre, that we talked about, I think, in an episode last week, where can the Broncos defense get 20 interceptions on the season, whereas they had 15 last year? I think it's more feasible in this manner.
I like that. I do. I like that a lot. I think back to the 2013 season when the Broncos offense had 5 guys that had, I think it was 10 plus touchdowns overall. It was Noshawn Moreno, late great Demaryius Thomas. Yeah, it was just silly out there. Wes Welker, Eric Decker, Julius Thomas. They all had 10 plus touchdowns that year. How cool would it be to see 4 different guys or more on this Denver Broncos defense here in 2025 with 4 plus turnovers, like not just interceptions, but forced fumbles? I think that could be, that could be within the realm of possibility, Cody. Like Talanoa Hufanga, we expect him to always be around. He's a turnover machine. Brandon Jones, ball hawk. Pat Surtain, ball hawk. Riley Moss, even in what was perceived as a down year for Riley, he still had a pair of turnovers forced as well as a recovered fumble. So yeah, I think that there's definitely an opportunity there. Jaquan McMillan, he forced a lot of turnovers in his first 2 seasons. So I think the defensive front is going to get the ball out more this year. That was something that I think they could work on compared to last year, as well as tipping the ball at the line of scrimmage when they don't get home as pass rushers. That's something that can create more turnovers. So how about 4 or more guys with 4 plus turnovers this season? And maybe that's even selling these guys short a little bit.
I like it. I think when you factor in the mentality of this defense, they want to be violent. They want to be aggressive. That fits into what Vance Joseph wants these guys to do. And I think you have the guys that embody that mindset as well on this team. You mentioned the selflessness of these guys on the defensive line, the pass rush unit, and how they open things up for one another. It's the same exact thing that leads to opportunities for those guys on the back end or that second level of the field, that inside linebacker. I'm with it. This was a fun exercise, and Broncos Country wants you to get involved as well. Make sure you share with us your defensive bold predictions this upcoming season. Who will lead the team in sacks this upcoming year? Who will lead the team in tackles, takeaways, interceptions, passes defense, you name it. Let us know. We are always excited for that here, Broncos Country, as we get ready for the start of our training camp previews beginning next week. Tomorrow's episode of the show, here's what you can expect. Sayre and I, we're going to sit down and we're going to go through the top 3 position battles that are going to headline training camp beginning later on this month, starting off with Jahdae Barron versus Jaquan McMillan inside the nickel. You get all that and much more on tomorrow's episode, Locked On Broncos.